Hey Bikeaholics, hope you're well. Definitely hope you're getting some riding in. So Harley recently flew me to Arizona to spend the day trackside with the Harley King of the Baggers race team, tweaking and dialing in the bikes. It is pre-season. Also, while I was down there, they announced the release of a new 135 cubic inch crate engine. Now, if you want an inside look at King of the Baggers, I did a video on that. I also did a video on the new crate engine. I'll put both on the end screen of this video, and I'll link to them in the description below. And so while I was down there for the day, I got to get very detailed video shots of all the modifications on an actual King of the Baggers race bike, the new 2023 version. And I'm going to go over it and explain a lot of the modifications and kind of how they tweak things to give you a better understanding. Let's take a look at the bike. All right, as we get started here, I do ask you to just bear with me. I learned as much as I could about these bikes, and so if I'm wrong a little bit on some certain technical specification, please just cut me some slack. I'm just trying to give an overall understanding of the modifications that are made to these bikes. So what we're looking at here is an actual 2023 Harley King of the Baggers race bike. This is a first look at it because it was revealed to me when we went down to Arizona, and it is pre-season. Now, while I was down there, they were still working on these bikes, tweaking things. So what you see in this video and what you actually see hit the track may be just a little bit different. Oh, and if you didn't know, this is factory rider Kyle Wyman's bike number 33. Now, the foundation of any of these race bikes is an actual, consumer production bagger, and they actually have to use that frame per the rules. So the motor starts as a 131 cubic inch crate motor, which, if you're wondering, is 2146 cc. Now, they do bump up the compression on the pistons, so those are different. The cams are more aggressive, and the fuel injectors are beefier in order to flow more gasoline to those thirsty cylinders. And at the end of the day, producing about 150 horsepower and 150 foot-pounds of torque at the rear wheel. And just to give some sort of understanding of that, if you're looking at a regular Road Glide Special with the Milwaukee 8114 cubic inch, that's pushing about 100 horsepower and 119 foot-pounds of torque, so quite a bit more powerful. And it's fair to say on the flat sections of the track, this bike can do somewhere between 160 and 170 miles an hour. And so looking around, you can tell they had some cooling issues. Now these bikes, I believe, redline at 6,800 RPM. And so they're doing laps around the track, and they're obviously averaging much higher RPMs than an OE redline, which I believe is around 5,500 RPM. And that just generates a lot of heat. And so the first notable thing is they put a very large size oil cooler up front where the Road Glide headlights usually go. And interestingly enough, they found through testing that the stock horn actually deflected and tunneled the proper amount of air to keep the rear cylinder cool. And they removed that at some point and found out they were overheating. So they actually made a duct, if you will, and they call it the horn fang, to direct air right over the rear jug. They also added some additional extensions on the cooling fins. All right, so one of the first things when you look at this bike is the ground clearance it has. And I don't know exactly how high it sits, didn't have a tape measure, but obviously they need that height. And it also has a lot more lean angle. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. But you need that. You need that height. You need that lean angle if you're actually going to, be racing on the track. Otherwise, you're just going to be framing out all the time. And so they've increased the lean angle to 55 degrees on this bike in comparison to a production Road Glide, which sits at 32 degrees. With that clearance, obviously, the suspension is responsible for that. And I don't know the actual lengths of the suspension. And moving up front, we can see they're running Öhlins, Screaming Eagle, forks, inverted. Beautiful to look at, all the mechanical things on this bike. And as we move around the rear, also Öhlins, Screaming Eagle, and of course noted by those canisters sticking out the rear. And to complement that clearance, they move the foot pegs up high, along with the brake pedal and shifter. Also, all those controls are moved back, and that puts the rider in a more forward racing position. Now, it's my understanding that they're using the good old tried and tested 6-speed transmission that we're all familiar with as a foundation. Now, I don't know, what they're doing with gearing there, but I do know that it's been converted to a proper GP shift bike. And that means as far as gearing, it's 1 up and 5 down, complete opposite of your consumer model. And with exhaust, you're looking at a Screaming Eagle 2-into-1 system. You can see the O2 sensors up there, of course, and it does stop short, doesn't go all the way to the rear of the bike. Clearly, the race team knows what they're doing there. And of course, you've got the high flow air intake on the right side of the bike here. So of course, to make this a proper race bike, you got to shave as much weight off of it as you can, and they've done a good job with that. Stripping it of any parts that aren't needed, of course, you can look all over the bike and see that. Mainly, up in the fairing, get rid of the boombox infotainment system along with speakers. And then they've reduced weight even further. Of course, very nice front low profile fender using carbon fiber. Also, the rear fender is carbon fiber. And then another notable thing on these bikes when you look at them is that big carbon fiber belly pan underneath. And of course, that's required to be there to catch any fluids that might be dripping. So at the end of the day, they've got this bike down to around 635 pounds in comparison to like a production Road Glide, which comes in at 850 pounds wet. And of course, as you've seen, a lot of the customized components are aluminum, which is also a weight savings. And per the rules, in 2021, the minimum allowed weight for these bikes was 635 pounds. And in 2022, that changed to 620 pounds. And just a reminder, this was pre-season and this bike still was not completed. And so they should be replacing those saddlebags you see and fairing with carbon fiber replacements. All right, and looking at the wheels, I believe the rules say you can't use carbon fiber wheels, so it looks like they're using a cast aluminum, and they are custom 17-inch wheels so that they can run the standard issue MotoAmarica Super Bike slicks. And the width of the rear is a 200 millimeter, and the front is 120 millimeters wide. All right, so looking at the left rear of the bike here, you can see it's been converted from belt drive to chain drive. Now, I believe first season at least, the rules were you had to use the stock swing arms. And so that caused some problems with trying to get the chain around the swing arm, and they had to put some idler sprockets and things like that. At some point, those rules did get changed, so now you can have a customized swing arm. And as you can see, they've got a nice CNC'd billet aluminum swing arm. And from what I could see, got rid of all the idler sprockets. And you can see it looks like billet aluminum CNC'd primary cover on the right side here. And you can also see a protective piece of metal there. And it's also angled up, just further giving it that desired lean angle. And of course, you've got dual front disc brakes and single disc rear. All the discs are 300 millimeter and everything is Brembo 4-piston calipers. And so you take a look at the seat and you're obviously like, okay, that's not normal. It's super thick. They really had to build that seat up because obviously, you've raised the bike and now you've put the pegs up really high for that lean angle. And so now you need to get the rider up even higher. And then of course, they've got that custom block over the tank there. So they can wrap their legs and thighs into that and really get control on this bike. And of course, you can see that 6-gallon fuel tank, is also dented in for placement of their knees. And also note that they are running race fuel. And there's nothing better than the smell of that while I was down at track day. And so that brings the seat height to around 36 inches, which is pretty tall. And you'll actually see the riders get on the bike. The team helps them hold the bike up because they can barely get one tiptoe down, and then they let go as they get going. And as we move up more into the rider triangle, so to speak, you can see the more flat handlebars, and that's really to get the rider forward. And obviously a custom, aluminum triple tree up there and bar clamps. And of course you can see in the dash an electronic dash unit. It's for racing. It's really for data acquisition during testing, engine temps, head temps, brakes, acceleration, RPMs, lap times, gear position, all kinds of stuff helpful to the riders and team. And you might see those plastic bottles tucked up underneath the fairing. Those are for fluid overflow. You can also see that low profile windshield. designed to really knock that air up and over the rider. And don't forget, the reason it's so low is these guys are leaned way forward over that tank in the racing position. And finishing it off up front, you've got custom levers, grips, and reservoirs, and it is a cable clutch. And of course, the switches and housings. All right, so I'm popping a couple videos on the screen here for you. One of them is that Arizona trip, an inside look at King of the Baggers and what it's all about. The other one is that new 135 crate engine. All right, peace, I'm out.